idea. Miz went home and paced a bit, thinking of his plot, then wrote once more to Santa Claus, and he asked for a lot. Miz wrote non-stop for many hours before he finally relented, even asked for several things that had not been invented. Finally, at the bottom of this lengthy list of games, the Miz That No Good Scoundrel signed CM Punk's full name. He felt a need for retribution. His pursuit became a quest. Below the name he'd carefully forged, the Miz wrote down his own address. Since the new kid was a new kid and had not written Santa Claus a letter, toys meant for Punk would go to Miz. He couldn't have planned this any better. Miz mailed out the fake letter to make his intentions clear. He went up on the rooftop and painted, CM Punk lives here. With Christmas Eve upon him, the Miz perfected his cruel lies. He bought face paint and some dark hair dye to complete his punk disguise. He slicked back newly darkened hair and painted bags beneath his eyes. He taped up both wrists with care and laughed, that nasty skunk. With the slick back hair, the eyes and the tape, he looked just like CM Punk. The Miz gazed into the winter sky, trying to catch a glimpse of Santa's sleigh. He fell asleep in moments, dreaming about his awesome Christmas day. But when the first rays of Christmas morning shone down on Rescal Lane, a happy Miz rose, then froze, and let out a cry of pain. Not a single toy or present, not one package, small or big. No Rockalocks, no Socko socks, not one Kulbrowski wig. No boxes, bags or Christmas tags, no stockings meant for stuffing. Miz did the math and realised he'd gotten absolutely nothing. Nothing! 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 A startled Miz let out a gasp, standing over by the door. Was Santa's newest helper. How had he not noticed him before? The helper elf began to talk, and Miz felt his tiny heart begin to break. If Santa knows when you've been sleeping and he knows when you're awake, don't you think that he can tell if a letter is a fake? Next year, how about being good, just for goodness sake? Maybe if you're good next year, you'll get all that you expect. Try and be a real star. Show tolerance and respect. The elf tossed Miz a stocking and said, now you've heard my words, now heed them. Keep the contents of this stocking close. You never know when you might need them. Miz clutched the special stocking as the elf walked to the lawn. He waved his hand, said, you can't see me. And like that, the elf was gone. Small snowflakes fell quite softly in the homes of Rescal Lane. Happy kids threw snowballs and played with their new games. They whistled and they shouted and called out to friends by name. Hey Seamus, hey Ryder, hey Ziegler, hey Barrett. We need a nose for our snowman. Can someone go and find a carrot? There was only one thing missing from this special Christmas day, so they all called on the new kid to see if he could come outside and play. For if had it not been for CM Punk, they'd all be inside tucked away, hoping that the mighty whiz would not make them pay. When CM Punk came out to play, all the children followed his tracks. He had a carrot for the snowman's nose and brought extra ones for snacks. He threw the football long and straight. He was an expert at Red Rover. He gathered all the kids around when Christmas Day was almost over. I can tell you'd like to ask me why I didn't ask for presents. The children nodded up and down, inquisitive but pleasant. You may think that I received no gifts because I didn't ask for toys, but I received the gift of friendship, your laughter and your joy. And if you listen very carefully, I think you'll hear a welcome noise. The kids did listen closely. My goodness, they were trying. Kofi Kingston heard it first. He said, "Do I hear someone crying?" Zack Ryder was the next to speak. "Could that be the Miz?" Kelly reassured them. "It is! Oh yes, it is!" They listened to the sounds of Miz, and the crying grew much louder. Louder! 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 Until finally it exploded like a match set to gunpowder. They looked and smiled at CM Punk, and they could not have been any prouder. The Miz's tears fell like rain that day. Some were heard to say, he may have cried 1,000,000,000 tears on that Christmas Day. Punk smiled and said, "I'll ask the man in red next year for some stuff. But Christmas Day, I'm proud to say, you're my friends, and that's enough." Then before he turned away, he said, "Sometimes lessons learned are tough." Twinkling stars danced off drifts of snow. Window panes were frosted. One lone child walked down Rescal Lane, his supply of tears exhausted. How dare those other kids have fun, thought Miz. This thought left him annoyed. He saw the silly snowman and felt it had to be destroyed. Then something seemed to touch the Miz before he could harm the frosty fellow. He lost the urge to knock it down or turn it kind of yellow. The Miz stood still and stared a while until the deep snow stung his feet. The snowman was quite handsome, but seemed somehow incomplete. He danced in place on frozen toes, then finally realized the snowman wasn't finished yet because it had no eyes. This lack of eyes was some surprise, but equally as shocking was knowing what he'd found at the bottom of his stocking. It was exactly what was needed to make this snowman whole. Mittens plunged into pockets and produced 2 chunks of coal. At that moment they did so. When the coal chunks left his pocket, Miz felt his spirit soaring, take flight, like on a rocket. He pressed those precious chunks of coal into the man made out of snow. If he'd known how good it felt to give, he'd have given long ago. One last tear fell that night. Miz understood the irony. For although the snowman got new eyes, it was Miz who now could see that acting like a bully was not a bit of fun. He'd made the other children sad with the things that he had done. The gift of sight, a magic night, like an old-time Christmas card, until a loud voice yelled, "Excuse me! You're standing on my yard!" But Miz was not discouraged despite all the grouchy talk. He wished his teacher Merry Christmas and even shovelled off her walk. But the volume of Miss Guerrero's voice woke the neighbours with a start. Several kids on Rescal Lane had witnessed Miz's stunning change of heart. Smiles were shared, waves exchanged. CM Punk nodded in approval. Perched atop of Miz's roof, a large elf worked on paint removal. He'd been witness to this unlikely scene as he watched kids play in the Christmas snow. This scene elf wrote this story down. He thought you'd like to know. He found a perfect dude to pen the rhymes, a tale for all mankind. We hope you've enjoyed this tale of Rescal Lane at Christmas time.